Hey there riders, Moto Journo Kris here today, and I wanted to talk the new Yamaha R7, and this is the LA version versus the Ninja 400. So we're basically talking two of, I guess, the really ideal sports bike options in the LAMS market, and there's quite a bit of difference between these two. And if you're looking for a first bike as well, this will probably be a comparison which suits you. Now between these two models, there is some quite significant differences. Probably the most important difference is that the Ninja 400 is significantly cheaper, as you'd expect from a 300 to 400cc machine, and that's true of the R3 and of the RC390. So if you're comparing these two bikes, obviously there's quite a difference in price between the two, and you do have to consider whether the extras that the R7 offers, whether you need them and whether you want to pay the extra for it. But if you do, I think it does make a great value proposition. Couple of differences. Ninja 400, 166 kilos or maybe 168 kilos wet. The R7 is 188, so it is a little bit heftier for sure. Also, we're looking at a 785mm seat height over here versus an 835mm seat height on the R7, which is naturally going to give the R7 a little bit of a more intimidating seating position. Once you add on those drop-down clip-on bars, that's even more the case, whereas on the Ninja 400, while it's got kind of like a clip-on style bar, it's actually on a riser, and the seating position between these two bikes couldn't be more different in realistic terms. Now, one thing I'm going to do really quickly is jump on the bikes, because as you can see here, I'm in more of the racer crouch. It's got those drop-down handlebars on it. My natural view is kind of down, so I do have to look up, which causes a little bit more neck strain, and you will need a bit of core strength to hold yourself up on this particular machine. If we come over to the Ninja 400 in comparison, it is a totally different seating position. The pegs are more relaxed, the bars are much taller, even though they've got that angle on them, and I'm just naturally sitting very, very upright, straight back, no strain on the neck, no weight on the arms at all. It is just a much easier bike to jump onto and a much more relaxed and more naked bike styled bike overall as far as those ergos. Single disc brake on the Ninja 400, dual disc brakes with 4-pot calipers here on the R7, so it's a big upgrade in braking. And that's not to throw any shade at the Ninja 400. It's got a nicely balanced braking system, but certainly nothing kind of insane by any means, where the R7 has a significantly higher spec braking system, particularly when you consider it's got a Brembo radial master cylinder here on the front, and it's got the dual discs and dual 4-pot calipers. On top of that, you are also looking at, on the R7 at least, the fully adjustable suspension, which is a big part of the overall package. I would say if you're keen on this bike, it is probably going to be primarily because it does have the fully adjustable suspension. And in realistic terms, while the Ninja 400 has a more basic suspension setup, which does the job really well, it's a little bit softer. It's a more of an everyday kind of machine as far as how that suspension's been set up, and that is because it has to suit a wide range of riders, and without any adjustability except preload on the rear, it has to do that quite well in all conditions. And I'd also say the Ninja 400 suspension is just that little bit plusher, and that is because obviously a lot of people are going to be riding these primarily on the road, even if it is a little super sport style machine. On the Yamaha R7, it is a much tauter suspension system. Even though it is adjustable, there's some room to move within that, but it feels like a significantly more premium suspension system, and it is a significantly more premium suspension system at the end of the day. So in that regard, there's also a bit of a difference between the two bikes, and so that obviously is going to come into effect in that while the Ninja 400 is a great all-rounder, the R7 is going to be better on nicer roads. It's going to be really suitable for the track, and while you can do either on either of these bikes, I think the R7 does have a definite advantage there. Also, another small point, on the Ninja 400 you're getting basically like a commuter tyre as standard fitment, and while it's a good long wearing tyre but not so great on the grip side, I mean it's good in the rain, it's good in the dry, but it's not an amazing tyre. You're getting the S22 tyres on the R7, which is a really premium kind of tyre, and as a result it's going to be a much nicer tyre in the long term as far as kind of grip, wet weather performance, all that kind of stuff. You can push on this tyre a bit harder than you can push on the standard tyres on that Ninja 400. And for comparison, those are the GPR 300s on the Ninja 400, a good commuter slash sportish tyre, but nowhere near the S22 as far as the sportiness factor at the end of the day. Now, while both of these bikes are great handlers, I've got to say, I think the lightness of the Ninja 400 has an advantage all of its own. It's easy to throw around, it's very confidence inspiring. The little parallel twin in it is great. It's got an enormous amount of power for the 400cc. It is a bit of a cheater engine. It's knocked the capacity up, so the only things that really match it are those 390s from KTM. And as a result, that's why it's quite popular, because for the price, it's essentially as much performance as you can get in that kind of segment. Now in the R7, you can either get the HO, which is the full power version, about 75 horsepower, or this restricted version, which is about 50 horsepower. Either way, this bike has significantly more torque than the Ninja 400. Now the Ninja 400 has a lot more torque than something like the R3. However, on the R7, the huge advantage of going up to a 650 class bike is just the enormous extra torque, and that is something that you will use every day. And obviously that's going to make the R7 a bit quicker off the mark than the Ninja 400. So if we're talking outright performance, there is quite a significant advantage in the R7, but I'm kind of one of the type of riders who would normally say that in real world conditions, while it might be nice if you're taking off from a set of lights and kind of chasing down your mates, the reality is that while there is a definite and quite significant performance advantage to the R7, I normally wouldn't use that as my primary kind of reason for buying that over the Ninja 400. And that's why in the past I've said I think the R3 is a good match for the Ninja 400 despite being down on performance in comparison to that bike. Now, while obviously with the more aggressive ergos on the R7, that does mean that you're kind of more committed and it's a little bit less forgiving, particularly for new riders, I will say the handling on this machine is absolutely insane. It's got a nice kind of gradual linear fall onto the side of the tyre, which is no doubt helped by those S22s. The way the R7, the CP2 parallel twin, delivers power is really second to none as far as confidence inspiring and a real beautiful feel of kind of the feel you have on the road and the traction. So in that regard, it's amazing. It's not to say the Ninja 400 is a slouch by any means. It is a great handler as well, but I will have to say the R7 engine, not in outright performance, but I would say in the feel and the character, is the obvious winner here. It's perhaps a little bit smoother than the Ninja 400. There are times where the Ninja 400 has a little bit of a rough edge, particularly on the fueling side of things, but then the R7 also has that a little bit as well. I would say that the R7 is a little bit smoother than the MT-07 just because of the way they've tuned it. However, at the end of the day, it is still the same engine, and as a result of that, you know, there's some commonality, and they are both a little bit rough around the edges, which for a lot of people is going to be a benefit. One area that I will say that the Ninja 400 has the outright win is just in the clutch pull. It is a super light clutch, where on the R7, it's kind of more of just a regular clutch. Not to say that the R7 clutch is heavy, but it is what it is. Both do have slipper clutches, so if you're riding aggressively, you're going to appreciate that, because knocking it down through those gears really aggressively is going to be an easier thing, not having to worry about the rear lockup as much. On top of that, a little bit of a clunkier gearbox in the R7, which is something that I always saw in the MT-07. That has been carried across, of course, because it's essentially the same engine, where the Ninja is a little bit slicker in that regard. So overall, I guess I would say there's quite a difference between these two machines. The R7 in the LA version is 14 on the road here in Australia. I think the Ninja is about 8, might be up at the 9 point now. I'll have to check the RRP and put it up on the screen. And so obviously between these two bikes, it's not just kind of a question of which is the better bike, because I would say, depending on your use, it's hard to argue that the R7 isn't the better bike. The real question is whether it's worth you spending, say, an extra $5,000 or $6,000 for the R7 over a Ninja 400 or perhaps an R3 or an RC390 if you're looking for the sports bike kind of theme, and whether you need the advantages of the R7. And while those advantages are quite significant, if you're a beginner rider, there's a good question to be asked there as to whether you're better off starting on something a little bit cheaper and then moving up to an R7 or to a full super sport bike, or whether you're the kind of rider who wants a bit more of a challenge and you want the R7 LA, the Lambs version, as your first bike, or whether perhaps you're looking at the R7, the full power version, over something like the Ninja 400 as a fully licensed rider. And if you're considering it in that kind of scenario where you like the idea of a smaller bike, but you're thinking maybe just bump it up into that 650 class with the R7, spend a little bit more, get the adjustable suspension, get the more premium package overall, that's probably a good idea for you there. Anyway, let me know what you think of the two bikes. Which of the two would you buy? Would you buy the Ninja 400 or would you buy the R7 as a new rider? Or if you're a more experienced rider, which of these two bikes would you choose? Would you go for the more slightly bargain basement Ninja 400, really great value? Or would you go for something with the higher specs like the R7, not at super sport level as far as what we expect there, but certainly a really good overall package. Anyway, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, I'll be back soon, and you can support the channel on Patreon.